Adios na hora o Yudavos na hora o Fadios na hora Runan kalenskara tu Wagos mi fawav na moner shul Gada vochagis manchen Ranik mishas gan mi o I me hain and dunya kora Fadios na hora Sahoro, Farijo, Sahoro, and Kala, Skiratu, Waward Ben and Toya Kaino, Koasa, Fanak, and Stranger Jenna, Swears, what's a pilot? You shouldn't Creole rain, I had Farijo, Sahoro, Beautiful Sahoro, Farijo, Sahoro. Waward misha mapa dugan aan en briar en shivel so frikatchen is de velle gruva. Kurschen kluar man da goashen tarios na horen nu. Hiuda vos na horen tarios na horen. Arunen kalens veren tu. Erend haya na bistraf for tabarik shinya gambal to fuyos na chaishen tafrutari tere kwa na kashin tarios na hora na hora tarios na hora Biggie water drinking machine, yes, my heart and my feeling. Juana Mara Farios, Nahora, Nahora, Farios, Nahora, and Karen Skara do it. Eva. Sinuheng, happelet lidak. Well, that should sporsel. That was fun. Thank you for listening. Now we're just going to go to greet each other and meet each other. And indeed, with this larger group, we've got 122 people in the house tonight. And with this larger group, there might be some strangers. So we'll try and use that kind of good hospitality and spirit of the Gael to greet each other. So what we're going to do is our tech team will break us up into groups of 3. And you'll just be asked to join a room, and all you do is accept the room, go into the room, and they'll be randomly divided. And we want you to ask or answer a couple of questions. And the first is just tell us where you're traveling from to the Céilidh tonight. So where are you calling from and what brings you here? And you can include in this answer a little bit about your connection to Gaelic and the Gaels, or the connection you'd like to have. And each person will have 3 minutes to answer the questions. And what we'd like for folks to do is people will take their turn with the 3 minutes. So the person speaks and the others listen. And we'd like everyone to take their 3 minutes so that everyone gets a chance to tell their story and the others will hear their story. We had discussed doing breakout rooms, and I'm just going to check in to see if we're still doing that. I'm not sure if we're going to do, I didn't get to talk to our tech team. I know we had thought about making Gaelic language breakout rooms. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully everybody will land. If you happen to land in a room by yourself, come back into the main room, because that's not much of a Céilidh if you're on your own. So this is a Céilidh Beag we're going on. Our tech group will put us in our rooms, and we'll get to meet some wonderful strangers. Really so pleased to be able to introduce our special guest, John Shaw, who's joining us from Edinburgh tonight. And I'll give a little introduction to John. He grew up in Ohio, and as a very young man, he developed an interest in Gaelic, and that took him to Scotland in 1961, where he went to see John Lorne Campbell, who told him about Nova Scotia and the Gaelic tradition of Nova Scotia. So John, later, when he started studying linguistics at Harvard, he would spend his summers in Cape Breton. And he must have enjoyed it because in the 1970s, he and his wife Jill moved to Glendale and raised their two daughters there for a period until the 1990s. And while John was in Nova Scotia, he did quite a lot of things. And one of the, I guess in my view, one of the most important things he did was he worked on the Gaelic Folklore Project, St. FX University. And in this project, he collected the stories, the folklore, tales, and the songs from more than 160 Gaels, Gaelic speakers. And this material, thousands of pieces, is still available online. And for Gaelic learners like myself, or folks trying to reconnect to their Gaelic heritage, this is just a precious resource that we have, the voices of the Gaelic elders, and we're able to learn the songs, like the one I just sang. And from that collection as well, two important books were created: Sciel Gawa, Tales Until Dawn, The World of the Gaelic, a Cape Breton Gaelic Storyteller, and it's the stories of Joe Neil McNeil, and Brian Oren, The Tales and Songs of Lochy McClellan. And John retired as senior lecturer in ethnology from the University of Edinburgh, and he stays in touch with Cape Breton through his work at the Highland, with Nova Scotia Highland Village, Storis de Vala and Storis de Aster. So we're very fortunate to have John continuing to work with us in the community and helping us with our Gaelic, and as we pick up songs and stories. So the poem Fáilte Choréiríon agus Cavaliana Noch. And I want to welcome you here, John, to Céilidh, the Gaelic Narrative Project.
Thank you, Frances. Unfortunately, this end, the connection is not very stable.
Okay.
What I suggest is, if you can't make out a word that I'm saying, just go like that.
Okay.
And I'll go and try to make a new connection, and you can, in the meantime, fill them in on whatever else you're planning to do. It'll just take a couple minutes if it doesn't work well.
Yeah, well, I can hear you fine. I think we can hear you. So we'll just continue on. So far, so good. Yeah.
Can you make out what I'm saying?
Yes, I can. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
It's all good. All good.
As long as it works, that's enough. As long as it's to you.
Yeah,
okay,
it works fine. What you could do, John, is if you turned your camera off, it might be better. You could try that, although we'd hate to lose you, but we can give that a try.
That's all right. No, there.
Yeah, that's okay. But Ian, I'm going to ask you to put it back on, actually, because it was okay before. So let's put your camera back on. Sorry about that, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you a lot better.
Okay.
With the camera.
Great.
That doesn't matter right now.
You sound good. You sound good.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian. I just wanted to. I want to welcome you here very much. We're so happy to have you. And this is a project about stories and connecting with our Gaelic culture through our own stories. And you have a lot of wonderful stories, I think, to tell about your experience of when you lived here in Cape Breton. And I was wondering if for the first first off, if you could take us back to that time when you first came to Cape Breton, when you were just a young man, and I'd like to know about what it was like when you got here. Where did you go? Who did you visit? What did you think of things? Cape Breton would have been a, a little bit isolated in that time in the 1960s, and I'm just wondering, how were you welcomed? So if you could take us back to that time when you first arrived in Cape Breton.
Okay, it was the summer of 1963, and I turned up at Port Hastings, and somebody from Glendale, it was MacEachen from Alec D's place, who picked me up, and I was going to stay with the parish priest there, Father Janangus Rankin, in the glebe house. This had been arranged for me by Father Malcolm McDonnell at St. Frances Xavier. We had friends in common. I didn't speak very much Gaelic, so they drove me to the glebe house and dropped me off in the driveway with my suitcase. And I was looking around, and finally knocked on the door, and the old lady came out, Sarah John White, Father Janangus's mother, and we had a short conversation, and I guess the gist of it was I was allowed to stay there for a few days, so that was fine. And Father Janangus came home and kind of introduced me around. It was his mother was a housekeeper, and he had an uncle there, Alec Beaton. They spoke what I thought was a fierce dialect of Gaelic in those days. They were came from Site Point, and it took me a while to get used to the way that their particular Gaelic went. They were very generous. In the evenings, we'd sit down and work on songs. And I suppose the introduction that I had to the world of house visits and caling and so on started right there in Glendale. Father Janangus would work us pretty hard during the day. No tractor, we had horses, hay, potatoes, what have you. And in the evenings, I'd get up the energy from somewhere to go out. I had a small tape recorder to go out and record songs in the parish from people. And those were my house visits. And I learned very quickly that although things weren't rigid, it was all very informal. People were very hospitable, very welcoming. There's always a cup of tea, and they'd start out with conversation, and that would last for maybe a half hour. And then I began to realize that there was a reason for this. They wanted to find out what you were like, even if you had some business there, which I didn't really have, but I was just getting to know people. But they'd listen quite carefully to any reply that you give. And the questions were, on the surface, quite ordinary questions, but they weren't really that ordinary because they were finding out everything about you. I got used to that pretty quickly and actually began to enjoy it. So I used to visit Boyd's there, and then I'd go down and visit these two brothers, Johnny and Neil Williams, that lived about 3 miles away. And they had a lot of songs. I'd met Johnny at the gas station, and he said, "Come on down if you're interested in Gaelic." So I'd walk the 3 miles each way, and they give me songs, and when I got back to the glebe house, Father John Angus and his mother and his uncle were there waiting to hear the songs on tape that I'd recorded. So it was a gradual introduction to Céilidh's word, and it was usually just a few people, but it was about hospitality and it was about entertainment in terms of community culture to start. But things rapidly developed from there. There was a man staying in the parish who lived in Boston by the name of Bill Lamy. Many of you know the name. And he would come down on Friday and Saturday nights at the glebe house, and he'd play the fiddle, and Father John Angus would play piano. And that was good music. And the audience would be myself, Sarah John Y., and Alec Beaton. And so they'd play for a while, and then Bill would take a break, and we'd all go into the kitchen, and we'd have our tea and biscuits and molasses. And then we'd go back for more music, and it was probably around 11:30, 12 when we stopped. And then, of course, up bright and early the next morning to harness the horses and get going. So that went on for a few weeks, and then Father John and Bill Lamy decided that they were going to make a visit to Boysdale, and they were going to see there was Finlay Cameron and his wife, and they invited me along, and they sat in front and I sat in the back, and we went across the two ferries, which is what you did in those days, and went to Finlay Cameron's house. The connection there was that Finlay Cameron was related to Father John Angus through people in Mabu, and so was his wife. And those were real evenings, because you'd have Bill Lamy and Father John Angus, but you'd also have Joe McLean. And Bill Lamy and Joe McLean played together a lot. They were great together. And Finlay Cameron was an exceptional singer. And so when they were playing music, Finlay would sing, and other people would sing as well. And you'd have maybe, I don't know, 30 people there, sitting in the living room. And I'll always remember when Finlay was singing, he sang this Donoghban McIntyre song.
Really?
Yeah, and I remember just waiting for him to hit the high note in the verses. I didn't think he could do it, and he got it every time.
So, John, what did you? I'm just wondering what you thought of all this as a young fellow. You know, I know you were had heard about this place, Nova Scotia, and I'm just thinking, how did this impact you? I mean, what did you think of all this?
Well, it was a lot different from Scotland.
Okay.
Because it was so North American. Like, people drove, Ford Victorias and so on. And the English, before I got to know it, sounded pretty much like North American English.
Yes.
But you got into the Gaelic world, and it was completely different. And of course, the music was different, the dances, and just the social relations of people were different. I grew up in the country, in the U.S., so this wasn't totally new.
Right.
But socially, it was. I'd never been like this.
Right.
Even in Scotland, it wasn't very much like that. So anyway, those were the Céilidhs. A big feed. Again, when the musicians took a rest and some songs had been sung, and I think we get back around 2 in the morning from those those occasions.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Father Francis and Janet are still living. Italy's,
Janet Janet passed away,
uh,
actually.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
but I was going to suggest that probably Father Francis will remember this well. Somebody
Mhm.
should go and record about exactly what happened during
Mhm.
those Céilidhs because they were
Right.
great.
Now, John, we're at a point where we're in Cape Breton or in Nova Scotia, as you know, since that time, because you're looking back to the 1960s and 70s and 80s. A lot of these older people have passed on, and we're, the last of our, um, really the last of the generation that grew up here, who had Gaelic as a first language, who spoke it at home. So it feels like it's a real loss, for our community. Um, and at the same time, I guess there's some when you're staying connected here with Nova Scotia, and I was wondering if you could share what do you see here in terms of the Gaelic community now? Um, what do you see in terms of the um, what we have to build on here?
Well, of course, there's been a language shift. That's obvious to everyone who was here early. It's mostly English. Very few people speak Gaelic in Nova Scotia as a first language. I haven't lived there for the past 30 years now, but of course I've been back as often as I could. But socially, I think a lot of what you have with the younger people is a lot has been transmitted to them. And what you have is a lot of the same social skills, a lot of the same social needs and that the older people had traditionally in the communities, but it's been translated into English.
Hmm.
But people still need to get together, probably more than they do in many other places.
Hmm.
I think the media have come in and they've had a certain influence, but it's not really that pervasive. I think a lot of people maybe watch TV because they miss the company.
Hmm.
People,
Hmm.
and people say Alec Francis people and so on used to complain when we lived there that people didn't visit as much.
Hmm. Hmm.
Say you, I think there's some truth in that. Um, but I found that the older people there, the Gaelic speakers, had just a beautiful social style.
Hmm.
Um, you could visit people you didn't know, and within a few minutes you were relaxed.
Hmm.
They were easy to be with.
Hmm.
They were accommodating in ways that to me were quite unusual,
Hmm.
and they were generous that way too.
Hmm.
Uh, they very often I'd go to see people. Father John was one of them. It was just a social style. You go in with nothing. You go in with empty pockets, and you come out feeling like $1 million.
Hmm. Hmm. Now
It
you were
was just a
saying,
conversation.
yeah, you were saying that you feel those social skills have been transmitted here, but the language has been lost. Is it possible for people to learn the language and be able to capitalize on those social skills to in a sense rebuild a Gaelic community and a Gaelic identity here in Nova Scotia?
I think the two go together.
Hmm.
I've always thought that way. You can't really have the fullness of one without the other.
Hmm.
Um, and some of these language movements that want to say in Britain that want to produce British people who speak a Celtic language. and not much
Mhm.
else.
Mhm.
Frankly, I don't really see the point.
So the language
But
and
this,
culture go together, and the potential. Do you see that in Nova Scotia? There's a potential for the Gaelic community, if people were to learn the language, for the community to be um, uh, reconstructed in a sense.
well, I don't know, how you phrase it, but I think we've seen with the programs that various of us have worked on in Nova Scotia, that learning Gaelic in a Gaelic social context of some kind has worked extremely well for
Mm-hmm.
people. And from what I've been told, people have enjoyed it. They've seen it as something that had some meaning for them, that maybe fulfilled a need that they wanted to build on. So, whatever you want to call it, a restoration or a movement, or simply just a social group of some kind, which is already forming as far as I can see.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's working for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It certainly cheered me up sometimes.
Yes.
But you see the improvement in the language skills of people of your generation, Frances. It's remarkable. I don't see anything like it going on in the universities here where I've taught for years.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and in addition to that, of course, people know a lot of songs. People are coming up with songs of 20 verses now, which they understand. They understand what they're about. They feel them because it's part of a much larger experience.
Mm-hmm.
So my feeling is just working with what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, with these groups of people coming together and concentrating on the tradition, they're going to remember a lot that's buried in their own mind from their families. That simply wasn't relevant, in institutions, but now is in their lives because it was actually very important in communities.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's the way I see it. I think the very social learning is about the best I've come across for this.
Yes. Yes.
And
Well.
I think there's potential.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that there was a singer in Broad Cove, Dan Allen Gillis, who
Yes.
he mentioned. I think he was actually getting quite concerned about this. He was saying, "What's the sense in these small, fairly isolated culture piped in from 200 miles away to the neglect of what people already know and value?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a great question.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, John, so much for joining us tonight. We're going to move on to the breakout room so we can reflect a bit on what you had to say. And I really appreciate you joining us, because I know it's fairly late over there and with internet problems and everything, but it was a real pleasure to have you and to hear your stories about when you first came here. And of course, thank you so much for all the work that you did, and the songs and the stories that you preserved for us to learn.
Well, thank you, Frances, for letting me participate. And I think I'll just wander off and have my cup of herbal tea before bed.
Okay, thank you, John. Thanks so much. Thank you, Violet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. So, Harshan, Anish, the time is moving along very quickly in this Céilidh. So we're going to go into the breakout rooms again and reflect a little bit on what John was saying. And we're going to, it's going to be the same as the last time. We'll be 3 of us in a room, and we're going to put the questions in the chat that will follow you into the room. So and we want you to think about, to answer these questions, and we'll have about 5 minutes each. So the questions are, where did this conversation take you? What touched you or moved you? And if you could take us to a moment when you were on a visit that felt welcoming or enriching to you. And I should say, it doesn't have to be a house visit or a visit in the Gaelic community. It's just something, a story about a space that you were that made you feel welcome and at home. So we'll have 5 minutes in our rooms. And again, if we can just sort of everybody take a turn and listen. It's really important for folks to hear us and to witness our stories, and for us to hear the stories of others. So the tech team will put us in our groups, and we will. We're just now we're just going to take a little bit of time to reflect in the chat. So I mentioned the chat box is down below, and if you press on that, it'll pop up. And we have some questions for you, and would like to take a few minutes for folks to reflect on your conversations tonight, and share some of your comments in the chat. So the questions we have is, what surprised you in what was heard or said tonight? Was there anything that surprised you? What themes did you hear? And was something sparked in you from the conversations tonight? So while we're writing in the chat, and Margie Beaton is going to play us some music. We're going to take about 5 minutes to do some reflection. So.
You hear that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead and type.
Oh, fabulous. Right. Thanks so much, Margie. That was beautiful. I want to, everybody, it's lovely to see the comments coming in, and please keep them coming. It's wonderful. What I'm seeing a lot of people are remarking on how important the visits were, how people miss them, And I saw a comment there. Someone was wondering, will they start after the pandemic is over? Will there be a whole visiting revolution happen? That was my words, not theirs. But who knows? So it was a lot of nice reflections. So please keep writing. We're going to gather these comments, and we'll put a summary on the website, on the How We Thrive website. And so we'll capture what everyone is saying here tonight. But please, so keep writing. And now we're going to quickly just move to the next part of our program. And we're going to meet the folks that are going to bring you the next 5 sessions of Céilidh. This is the team I've had the pleasure to be working with over the last little while. And so we're going to meet them and hear from them what they're planning in the next for the next session. So we're going to start with the next one we're having next Friday. They'll continue every Friday except for Good Friday. And we have Bernadette Campbell, who's going to tell a little bit about her session. Bernadette, where are you calling from tonight?
Okay, so I'm zooming in from Cool Shutik Deck, the rear of Little Judik. Specifically, I'm on Hawthorne Road in the Port Hood area here in Cape Breton. So, yeah, so I just want to say thanks for everyone for joining us tonight. It was a really nice visit. I felt so at home and so comfortable. It was really, really lovely. So next week, you're all invited back. So if you haven't registered, be sure to do that. And you're invited to Céilidh, our visit. And for this session coming up, it's called The Hidden Life of Gaelic Women. So during this session next week, you'll meet 3 women who grew up in with Gaelic-speaking women in their lives. And so my guests are Nona McDonald-Dyke of North Shore here in Cape Breton, and also Marilyn McKinnon, who's from Westmount, and that's near Sydney here in Cape Breton. And also another Cape Bretoner, Amber Buchanan, who lives in Grass Cove in Victoria County. So these women are going to share with us next week. So these guests will take us to the homes that they know very well, the homes where Gaelic milling songs were sung, where the love of fiddle tunes was shared, and where Gaelic conversations ensured that the wisdom that these women had, or they met in these Gaelic homes, was passed on to the next generation. So we'll learn about what has been women's contribution to Gaelic and Gaelic culture. So Himi Shiv and Ahachkin. So I'll see you next week.
Leva tapal at the Vernac. Chinu, agus salo echan haniku. Oh, wow, good job. Chinu, okay, next up is Ian McLeod. You are in the session after Bernadette.
Yes, and I'm speaking to you from an undisclosed location in Dartmouth, or Ballinalock. And I'm going to be doing the session on March 26th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, and it's called Where Can Gaelic Live? And while it was very, it was great to hear John Shaw speak earlier, and a lot of the conversations that flowed out of that were about looking back in a very sort of respectful and important way. I think my session is really about looking forward as well. And it comes out of a conversation, to some degree anyway, that I had with somebody a couple of years ago. I've made a couple of films in Gaelic, and I was explaining the plot of the first one to somebody, and somebody who's not a member of the community. And they said, well, that doesn't sound very Gaelic. And I didn't really push back, but I thought, well, what does that even mean? And so it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I really wanted to explore this idea of the different contexts in which the language can be used. So in my session, I'm going to be speaking with 4 different people who all in their own ways are taking the language into new and I would say absolutely appropriate areas. So I'm going to be speaking with Grania Eel, who is in New Brunswick at the moment, but she is an Irish educator, and she's done a lot of programming with Irish-speaking youth in Ireland, and she's also running some Irish language programming in New Brunswick. I'm going to be speaking with Joyce McDonald, who I believe is here tonight, and who lives in Bedeck and works at the Gaelic College and has been very involved in a number of writing and film and other initiatives. So we're going to be speaking about that. And finally, I'm going to be speaking, some of you may have heard of this organization called FC Saunas, which is a Gaelic language soccer initiative in Scotland. And so I'm going to be speaking with Callum Ferguson and Donnie Forbes. So I'm really looking forward to that session. Again, it's called Where Can Gaelic Live? And it is going to be on March 26th.
Okay. Tapala Dian. Chenu. Would be a good one. And next up is Margie. What
Yeah,
do you? Yeah.
we're cooking up a whole menu for everyone. We hope that everyone will keep coming back, because it's just the tip of the iceberg, as all of this is. And this crew has put together something really lovely. And I just have to say how awesome it is. I hope everyone's feeling a little buzz from all of this, because it's so exciting to have such, not that kind of, well, whatever kind of buzz.
Not yet.
But, to each their own. But it's just great that we can embrace technology like this. And I kept thinking about the people that have passed on, and wouldn't they be flattered to know we were talking about them on Zoom in these special ways, and lonesome for them. So it's a gift for them for sure. My session is the Friday night after Easter. What day does that fall on? I should know that. April 9th is the session, and we're going to talk about dance, and more specifically the square dance tradition that has been embraced. And it's been such an unusual year for us not dancing in a collective, and it actually came out of some conversations that we had early on with our group, and how quickly stories came to mind of the dance tradition, and the stories that came from inside on the dance floor and outside the halls and everything else. And there's a richness there, and we can't take it for granted. So we're going to take stock of what we've had and what we hope to have again when things resolve a bit. My guests that will be joining me, I have 3, and this is the big premiere of their names. So I'm going to be joined by Margie McGuinness, who comes from Judic originally, but lives in West Mabu and is no stranger to the West Mabu dances. Over 20, maybe 25 years with herself and Jimmy running those dances. So we'll get some great stories from her. Dale Gillis of Scottsville fame, and he is a regular to the dance circuit, and we want to find out just what keeps him going and why he loves it so much. And my aunt, Mary Janet McDonald, who you might know from Tunes and Wooden Spoons on Sunday afternoon. She's big into baking, but she's a dancer first.
Oh.
And I think, and she's going to talk to us a bit about her own history with it and the fun of it. So we hope that you'll join us then.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Margie. Next up is Evan.
Hi,
Hector.
hi everyone. My session is going to be April 16th. I'm going to say that now so I don't forget to say it later. We'll be visiting, and myself and Frances MacEachen will be co-hosting this session. We'll be visiting with Mickey, John H. McNeil in Janesville, just close to Iona there, and Colin Watson, Mickey's good friend and neighbor. Mickey is an elder in the Gaelic community. We heard John Shaw talk about the wonderful reception he got and the wonderful Céilidhs he had. And there are still, some people that you can go in, and people who learn Gaelic as a first language, and growing up at a time when Gaelic was prevalent and dominant in the community. And Mickey is one of those people, and a wonderful personality and all of that. And as I say, Colin lives next door to him, and they're good friends. Colin's a young man who learned his Gaelic in Cape Breton. Learned it as a child growing up, which is very encouraging in these, part of what we're doing here. And so we'll have a visit. We'll have some conversation about the community as Mickey remembers it growing up back when Gaelic was in every house. And I think there were houses where some of the older people didn't speak anything but Gaelic. And a window on that world. A couple of stories, maybe a song. It's going to be a visit. I hope you attend. It's going to be, I think you'll enjoy it. It's going to be informative, pardon me, and entertaining. So that's April 16th. There, I said it twice. Like that.
Yeah.
Good
And Mike, you're going to do the last session. What will your session be about? Oh, we can't hear you.
My microphone cut out there. So hello, everybody. I'm calling in from Ballymore, Halifax. Lovely to see such a big crew out tonight, and I really loved having a chance to visit with a couple of you. I hope we'll see you again in the next sessions. My session is called Bun is Ceann. Ask not what you can do for Gaelic, ask what Gaelic can do for you. And the thinking there was that when you're involved in a culture that suffered years, like centuries of repression and decline, it can be kind of disheartening and even daunting to think about how much work it's going to take to make it vital again. But I know myself, when I think about it from another perspective, what does it do for my life? It just makes me feel so good. It really puts a smile on my face. So we're going to swap that question around and ask you all to come and join us and tell us about the big or small things that in Gaelic that lift your life. And what are you inspired to do with it in the future? What do you think it will be doing 10 years from now, 20 years from now to continue to enrich your life? I have two guests that are going to be joining me, Maddie Britton and Kenneth McKenzie. I see Maddie's on the call. Hello, Maddie. So Maddie is originally from Edinburgh, Scotland, but now makes her home in Nova Scotia. She's a Gaelic speaker, a Gaelic singer, a musician, a dancer, and project manager of the Language and Lyrics Project, which is taking recorded Gaelic songs from Nova Scotia and transcribing them and indexing them so they'll be more accessible for people, which is a wonderful, wonderful project. And Kenneth, who's not on the call tonight, is from Mabo Coal Mines, Cape Breton. He's a native Gaelic speaker from Nova Scotia, which is nice to see, as Ekin was saying. Kenneth's also a fiddler and a piper and is the Director of Education at College in the Gaelic, the Nova Scotia Gaelic College. So Kenneth and Maddie are going to give us some of their insights about what it is about Gaelic that really fills their lives. So I hope you'll be able to join us all on that last day on April the 23rd.
Thanks, Mike. Wow, I'm quite excited about these. It's been such a pleasure working with this group on this project. It's been a lot of fun. We've shared a lot of stories ourselves. And so we're just looking forward to having you all, and hopefully you can join us again for another session. And we're going to have to wind down this session, unfortunately. I'm feeling like it's been a really wonderful call to be able to have so many people on and such enthusiasm for the Gaelic and the culture and our guests. So thank you so much for joining us. I just want to say a couple of thank yous, and then Margie's going to play us out on the fiddle. And if anybody wants to get up and dance, that would be wonderful. So I really want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much. And I want to thank John, who may not be on the call anymore, but I really appreciate him taking the time. He's always been so generous and helpful. And I want to thank How We Thrive, which is the organization, the nonprofit group that started the Narrative Project. And we've worked with, very, very grateful for their support, especially Susan Spakowski. And thanks Susan and Natasha for their tech support. Also want to thank Communities, Culture and Heritage, where I work with Louis McKinnon, for all their support as well. And I also want to mention we had some lovely tunes tonight at the beginning, a recording of Donal Angus Beaton, and my Uncle Roy is so generous to share his music. I want to thank him for those tunes. I think he's here on the call. And that's everyone. So thanks so much. And Hikavaricht, Bishanau, Nakanunau, Anahachkan. We'll be here at the same time next week for Bernadette's session. And Tapali Vula. So Margie, you can drive her with some tunes now to finish off the Céilidh.
Take us home.
Thank you, Vada.
If anyone wants to get up and dance, you're totally welcome. It'd be great to see. All right.
Happily.
Hello.
Thank you for the tunes.
Pobria.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Kom hier Ragif. Slange foil.
Hiya, Farik.
Damian.
Oh, Gleva. Thank you, Frangek.
Oh, hello.
That was
So
so
nice.
great.
Nice to see you.
See you next
Take it easy.
week.
Lovely evening. Thank you. I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Be sure to come. Yeah.
I will. Promise.
Thank you.
Bye.
Lovely to see everyone here tonight. Okay, Robert. Smaat, thank you.
Dag leef. Morgentang er staan Europa.
Hi, Ted.
Morgen san Shinny and the morgentang er staan.
Shit the way.
Good day, Dad.
Smaat, thank you, Ted.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dad.
Thank you.
Hey, Dad. Look, how Nakadaram, sir. Family got the heck.
Oh, Hamish. Well. Oh, shit.
Oorzaak maar vaak in de hulle doen je zo. Bij oorzaak maar. All right, well, he should have a najaken.
Najaken. Bishanau. Cléva.
Was shit. Ana para geen
Oh, nog hoort je het. Ja. Dus je kunt tablets en Gian.
Zo.
Aha. Je zijn de sheriffs.
Cléva.
Dankjewel, Dougie.
Zo. Mike, wie? Ja, wel eens. Dankjewel.
Dankjewel. Bye, Susan. Bye.
Slange foil.